Hello everybody and welcome back to another great video. And this one is going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to do something a little more on the cerebral side today. I'm a big fan of the sci-fi genre in general. When you do it right, there's nothing like watching a really good science fiction movie because it always manages to ask the question, what if? Always makes me think. And usually, the sci-fi-ness of it all, is that a word? I don't know, I just made it up, is usually compensated with a really good plot line, which is why I like it. But today, we're going to think about something interesting. We're in 2022, a brand new year, and I personally have seen 3 movies that predicted the future accurately. Whoa. Now, if you ask me, that is pretty good writing. You ready to dig into this? Oh, this is going to be pretty cool. All right, let's get started. Number 1, Minority Report, a film done, I believe, in the year 2000, starring Tom Cruise and directed and written by Steven Spielberg. I absolutely love Spielberg's movies for one simple reason. He always does a really good job, even when he doesn't always have the best of resources. Who could forget some of the scenes in E.T. and never forget that even though by today's standards it seems cheap, never forget he was on an extremely limited budget and managed to create one of the most memorable films ever made. That's what I love about Spielberg's films. But when I sat down to watch Minority Report, it absolutely blew me away. Because all these years later, I literally saw what was on the screen coming to pass in real life. The plotline of the film revolved around Tom Cruise playing as a futuristic cop who is actually engaged in something called pre-crime, which is simply an experiment done in his city to see if it would be employed internationally, where you could actually jail a person before they even committed a crime. Now, that is an ingenious tactic. And if you haven't seen the movie, I won't really spoil how it was done because, well, it was kind of vague, honestly. But can you imagine that? So some of the things that I saw that really came to pass was, number 1, in the year 2000, he already had self-driving cars in the movie right there. In the futuristic city, nobody actually had keys or anything. It was all just wave your hand or something, kind of like Tesla's doing right now. Everything was fully automated. Oh, and of course, since everything was fully automated, that meant it could be shut down remotely, taken over remotely, kind of like that group of hackers did when they partnered up with Jeep in 2016 and actually took over a Jeep Grand Cherokee and piloted it remotely down an interstate. Well, guess what? The writer of this film, Steven Spielberg, already saw that in the year 2000. We saw the change in the police force, no longer as strictly a police force with guns and a badge, but now using robots. And we also saw the invasion and absolute destruction of people's privacy, as these little robots could come into your room and search you for any reason without a warrant or anything. So we already saw this. We saw a full dictatorship coming. These are all the things Minority Report got true. And it absolutely has come to pass, as we're seeing now. Although the concept of pre-crime was really more of sci-fi and really more to kind of engage you in the story, I could actually possibly see that. But we saw self-driving cars, the destruction of privacy, and we saw a fully technological / robotic police force. Wow. Now that is thinking ahead, people. Number 2, the original Terminator trilogy, written and directed by James Cameron in the 80s and 90s. We all know that James Cameron is a visionary director and producer. Whenever he works on something, it will be memorable. It's going to win a dozen awards. The man just knows what he's doing. But hands down, his landmark series was The Terminator, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. And while a lot of the film relies on a little bit of drama, and I'd almost say some points melodrama, it managed to create some of the most realistic and believable characters in cinema history. Who could forget Arnold Schwarzenegger playing as the Terminator? Follow me if you want to live. I had to do that. Or who could forget the John Connor, leader of the resistance, fighting against the robots trying to take over humanity? Yes, I know. It's an old concept, and we've kind of been redoing it ever since James Cameron invented the idea. But here's how Terminator accurately predicted the future. It predicted a future where no longer people would control themselves, but robots and artificial intelligence would become so intelligent that it could take over everything. It could take over our government. It could take over our military. And later on throughout the series, after they rebooted it with Salvation and Genesis and now Dark Fate, we saw how it wasn't just artificial intelligence in the military. Artificial intelligence took over entertainment. It took over every facet of our lives, and by the time we realized it was too late. So the question was, in the original Terminator series, will humanity survive? While a lot of species have gone extinct, will humanity be the one species that extincts its own self? And already through the future of robotics and artificial intelligence, we can kind of almost see that, and where we even have on History Channel the popular Prophets of Doom series predicting scenarios exactly like James Cameron saw in the 80s and 90s. I don't know how he did it, but James Cameron 40 years ago, or 30, 40 years ago, saw the future almost clearly. So Terminator, the original trilogy, also accurately predicted the future. And the third film that accurately predicted the future was Star Wars, A New Hope, written and, of course, directed by George Lucas and done with Steven Spielberg. Again, there's Spielberg again. Yes, it was a landmark film. It was a visionary film. It introduced us to Harrison Ford. That was his first breakout role. We got to see Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher. Had a wonderful cast and amazing special effects, and of course some of the most memorable characters ever. You'll never forget James Earl Jones as the nefarious Darth Vader. Couldn't resist, I had to do that. Or Luke Skywalker played by Mark Hamill, Han Solo played by Harrison Ford. It was just a good story, and we just love seeing lightsabers and epic duels. Where Lucas and Spielberg, who co-wrote the script together, got it right was in accurately seeing what would happen in the future. What would happen, although of course I know this isn't really the point, but what would happen if humanity went into space? Would we really be technologically different? Or would we be fighting the same battles? Because even though, yes, they have laser guns, they have ships with hyperdrives, there is still the exact same form of government. There is still a dictator ruling over everybody, the emperor, right? Instead of a more... Although Star Trek kind of saw it as being more of a, what's the word, refined government. It'd be a more benevolent government. The Star Wars original films saw the government as being fully evil and didn't change at all. Just like China and just like Britain and just like every other country, we were still ruled by an emperor, a one solid man ruling over everything. We saw kind of a one world government thing going on. You had him ruling through trade. Now that is brilliant. Instead of just imposing his will and saying, I am Grand Supreme Leader, they made it realistic by saying how he did it is he monopolized all trade. So while technically in the series you were able to be a free world, you weren't able to buy food, water, or any of the supplies necessary to actually live. So that is how a dictatorial government could even rule in space by monopolizing the trade. Although it sounds simple, that's absolutely brilliant, and almost you can see that today. We also saw how even though we look forward to the future when there's no more guns and bombs, it's still the same. We're still fighting with swords. We're still fighting over good and evil. George Lucas and Steven Spielberg already saw this, that despite our technology, nothing would actually change. It's absolutely brilliant. Many of the things you saw, we also saw like a one world kind of currency. Instead of using multiple forms of currency, everything is imperial credits. The imperial government rules over everything. They own the trade, they own the money, and the government. It's absolutely brilliant, and they saw this in 1979, before any of the films we actually discussed. How did they do it? Well, I'll let you decide that. But as you know, I love good writing, and my friends, this is writing at its best. So those are the three films. Minority Report in 2000 with Spielberg and starring Tom Cruise. Number 2 was the Terminator trilogy directed by James Cameron. And number 3 was Star Wars A New Hope in 1979. Absolutely brilliant, and it just makes us think, how did they do that? And it's just crazy to see things on the screen come to life right in front of us and almost kind of eerie. Thank you for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it.